Welcome, Scorpio, to your Jupiter Direct 4-month deep dive forecast. On March the 10th, 11th, Jupiter stations direct after a 4-month retrograde, right through to the end of June. Jupiter has a reputation of being very dynamic, giving us lots of extra confidence, but most of all being the planet of fortune. But in a water sign like Cancer, where it is exalted, it can have a reflection of its rulership of the sign of Pisces, which is much more to do with the spiritual domain. However, the ninth house for you personally does echo some of that Sagittarius energy. So when Jupiter arrived last June the 9th, it may have given you a lot of optimism about what you could achieve in the months following. But stern, restrictive Saturn squared off with Jupiter exactly on June the 15th. So I think since then, and amplified by the retrograde, some of the hopes you had may not have materialized quite as you expected. Now you have an opportunity right through to the end of June to change that. I'm going to share your event chart to give you a sharper perspective from a Scorpio view, and also share the upcoming aspects that Jupiter will make. Two of them are absolutely brilliant to help you along the way. By the end of the forecast, you'll have a clear picture of what you can expect around relationships, finance, energy, and work. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. So Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and when people talk on YouTube, particularly about Jupiter, I often feel it's about that Sagittarian energy, luck. It is the greater benefit, and that more Piscean influence tends to get a little lost. But for you, Jupiter in the ninth house does, as I mentioned, have that more go-getting energy. But of course, the host Cancer is about emotion. It is about security. And maybe one of the impulses Jupiter has given you is to create more space in your home, or perhaps actually physically move, or to do things that are perhaps more freedom orientated to actually feed your sense of personal pleasure. But as Jupiter arrived, as I mentioned, stern Saturn had just arrived in Aries, and the square between them meant your sector of obligations was clashing with the part of your chart that wanted to do what it wanted to do. So, in other words, with freedom comes responsibility, and that sure did show up then. If you have had some limitation on your movement since last June, whether it's physical, whether it's to do with your circumstances, whether it's to do with your thinking, whether it's to do with the amount of responsibilities you've had, it really wouldn't be a surprise. And through the retrograde of the last 4 months, the frustration may have mounted. Now things can change, however, because in the sign of Pisces, which we have a mutual receptivity with Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury may be retrograde, may be detrimented in the sign of Pisces, but the fifth house energy there is very much, including your traditional ruler Mars, about getting on the front foot, demonstrating your passion for the things that really give you a sense of pleasure and fulfillment. So I think you can start to move forwards now at pace. It's just worth remembering that the moon, the ruler of the sign of Cancer, is ironically in Sagittarius, but in the second house for you. So if you're wanting to do things that are uh, more spontaneous, more freedom orientated, it also has to work financially. What's going to help you in that regard is the planet of money, Venus, is anchored by Saturn in a very realistic way. And they're both in touch with your modern ruler of Pluto in your fourth house of how it feels. So as much as you may want to change something, bring a touch of spontaneity to your world, be much more in the moment. You can do that, but I think you will have learned from the limitations of Saturn for the 3 months and a week last year, and more recently, that you can actually have both. It's just a matter of toggling things somewhat. Now, on April the 14th, we're going to see a brilliant link between Venus in your sector of relating and Jupiter. If you're traveling anywhere at that time or you're going on a vacation, you could have quite the connection. Your love of history, architectural features, anything to do with local customs, and the richness of wherever you visited has probably been really amplified over this last 9 months. But I think it can get stronger between now and the end of June. And then on June the 6th, Jupiter comes out of its post shadow retrograde, gets back to the degree where the retrograde began on the 11th of November. But I should just say that at 15 degrees in the sign of Cancer, that's the maximum point of exaltation. That's particularly significant in astrology. And that link with Mercury suggests the enthusiasm and passion you share with around your ideas or the interest you have are going to be very hard for people to resist. But particularly if you are a creative, or you want to write or publish something, or you're a teacher or a trainer, or you do just love traveling, or for your work, you're doing something that is linked to knowledge or moving around. Now, when we get to the 9th of June, Venus moves forwards to connect exactly with Jupiter. And some kind of really beautiful event could manifest itself for you at that time. And if you look back over the year, and isn't it ironic that that aspect occurs the very date when Jupiter arrived in 2025, that you get the reward. So if you've struggled, you have had things that have prevented you being as liberated as you would like. If you've really chipped away at it in that very stoic way that you personally have, you will get a breakthrough at that time. So to summarize, as far as relationships are concerned, I think it has felt a bit contained. If you've wanted to perhaps liberate yourself from one that hasn't worked very well, it's hardly possible with Uranus in the seventh house. That may have come with some kind of obligation. Maybe it has been to children if a tie has broken down in that context, very sadly. Maybe it's around your work. You do a job that's work a day, that gives you a return, but it throttles off your passion. That may be something else that showed up. But the chance to be much more buccaneering in your approach, even though you can be cautious, really shows up strongly. So I think this is a very good chart if you are wanting to meet somebody new. It is a very positive chart if you do want to travel. If you want to start a new business, I think you could do it from the comfort of your home. But remember, Jupiter in the ninth house doesn't have to be about physical movement, it can be philosophical movement. So if you're signing up for a course, you're doing something like languages, learning to play an instrument, anything which gives you expansion in your consciousness through that Jupiter rulership of Pisces is just as important as the physical movement too. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've yet to watch your deep dive for March, please click on that video, Venus in Aries, that one. You can read my deep dive on Jupiter in Cancer on my website, that link. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, please see my testimonials below. And if you'd like to order your personal horoscopes, great value, very accurate, totally unique for the person they're produced for. You can get 50% off by applying Astro 26 at the checkout. If you prefer the Karmic Soul version, Draco, please apply Draco 26 to get the Draconic version. All the best, thank you, and goodbye.